The Lion King is basically just Hamlet. Fan Theory of The Lion King Part 3. Hello viewers. How are you? Welcome to Nibir Network. Today we will discuss about the third fan theory of The Lion King, which is, The Lion King is basically just Hamlet. In the universe of Disney factoids, saying that The Lion King is a remake of Hamlet is one of the brightest stars. It's got all the things that make a Disney factoid great. It's about a classic film, it feels a little conspiratorial, and it makes you feel pretty clever when you share the theory with other people. Unfortunately, it's unclear how true this factoid actually is. The Walt Disney Company has spent a lot of time talking about the influence of Hamlet in interviews over the years, but should we believe them? A cynic might suggest that the main motivation for spreading this narrative is prestige. Disney benefits hugely from popularizing some variation of the Lion King is Hamlet line. Shakespeare carries a lot of cultural capital and status, Hamlet even more so. It's one thing to be the highest grossing traditionally animated film of all time, but being basically a Shakespeare play would seem to elevate The Lion King from very popular pop culture and into something that definitely counts as art. If fans believe that The Lion King is genuinely a kid-friendly, less bloody, animated musical adaptation of Shakespeare's most famous tragedy, Disney gains pretty substantially. So how closely does The Lion King actually parallel Hamlet? The Lion King wasn't originally meant to mirror Hamlet. In a 2011 interview with Blu-ray, Minkoff said the film, which went into development 6 years before its release, was initially thought of as a Bambi in Africa. He said the filmmakers believed that because The Lion King was considered an original story, there was always the need to anchor it to something familiar. While it does share a crucial plot point or two with the 1942 tearjerker, the pivotal sudden death of a parent, for one, unintended parallels to another story emerged during a roundtable meeting. When we first pitched the revised outline of the movie to Michael Eisner, Jeffrey Katzenberg, Peter Schneider, and Tom Schumacher, someone in the room announced that its themes and relationships were similar to Hamlet, Minkoff said. Everyone responded favorably to the idea that we were doing something Shakespearean, so we continued to look for ways to model our film on that all-time classic. I'd be happy if we had even unconsciously channeled the old bard, added Allers. To start off with, let's work out who is who. Which characters do what in the story? In no particular order. Hamlet is Simba. Both are young men trying to avenge their dead fathers. King Hamlet is Mufasa. Both are the fathers of the protagonists and guide them on their quest. Claudius is Scar. Killed his brother and ascended to the throne. Queen Gertrude is Surubi, the mother of the protagonists that is now with the new king, although Gertrude is more willing than Surubi. Timon and Pumbaa is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Both characters are comic relief-like characters. Nala is Ophelia. Both are the love interests of the lead characters, although one ends up with a sticky end. Zazu is Horatio. I don't know all that much about Horatio, but he is the voice of reason in the play. So make of that what you will. In fact, the only characters that don't immediately have a correlation are Laertes, Ophelia's brother who schemes with Claudius to kill Hamlet, Polonius, although the hyenas fill the evil henchman role good enough, and Fortinbus, who appears pretty late and could be stretched to fit as Rafiki, but it's a big stretch. So it's clear there is a connection between the characters and the play? So is the plot the same? Let's dig to the cases that people often make. Number 1. It's not easy being prince. Both Simba and Hamlet are royalty. Both The Lion King and Hamlet depend on that fact. They're both the oldest child of the king, before their respective fathers die, and in line to the throne. In both The Lion King and Hamlet, the title is itself a play on this. Hamlet's dead father is referred to as King Hamlet in the play, and the whole of The Lion King centers on the question of which character is the rightful Lion King. Think of it this way, The Lion King and Hamlet would sort of suck if they were just about some average non-royal lion hanging out in Africa or some middle-class kid in Denmark. Number 2. Claudius's Scar. In both Hamlet and The Lion King, the evil uncle who kills the father and takes the throne for himself is a central figure. Scar and Claudius kill their brothers, fake an innocent accident, take the throne for themselves, and cast their nephews out. Scar may be a lot more animated than Claudius, but he's just as guilty. Number 3. Nala is Ophelia. Nala is absolutely the Lion King's Ophelia. Sure, Nala isn't beset by grief and madness. Sure, she doesn't drown. And, sure, it's a lot clearer that Simba loves Nala and isn't just faking it for other reasons. But both Nala and Ophelia are treated as Hamlet. Simba's unsurprising romantic interest, their families are intertwined, the characters around them expect their relationship to develop, and the workings out of the romance keeps the plot moving along. And for the record, yes, the gender politics of Nala or Ophelia is definitely at least a little bit icky. Number 4. Timon and Pumbaa are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. These guys are the quintessential sidekicks. They're carefree and fun. You can't always remember which name goes with which character because in some sense they're one character. In the case of Hamlet, though, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are working for Claudius and, at least theoretically, spying on Hamlet. Timon and Pumbaa aren't quite such duplicitous guys. Is this just another case of Disney turning a Renaissance revenge tragedy into a child-friendly film? You decide. Number 5. Rafiki is Horatio. In the most controversial Hamlet to Lion King character analogue, Rafiki is Horatio. The primary piece of evidence, here, is that Rafiki brings Simba to the ghost of his father in the same way that Horatio brings Hamlet to the ghost. Rafiki also connects the royalty of the Lion King to the world beyond the Pride Lands, in a way that's pretty similar to Horatio's bureaucratic diplomatic man-about-town role in Hamlet. Unlike Horatio, of course, Rafiki is much older, funnier, and more of a mentor than a friend. Plus, The Lion King would have been a pretty different movie if it started with the ghost in the way that Hamlet does, which leads us to the next point. Number 6. That whole ghost of the father thing. This is a tricky point. Both Simba and Hamlet are driven by the ghosts of their fathers calling for revenge. Both appear in a cold, midnight setting and say things along the lines of "remember me and mark me and you've forgotten who you are." Ideally in a deep, booming, haunty sort of voice. Yet in the case of Hamlet, the ghost is pretty explicit. He basically says, "My brother killed me, and it's your responsibility to kill him right back." No such luck in The Lion King, where Simba's takeaway is, "I guess I better go back home and stop living the high life with Timon and Pumbaa." Number 7. The Foreignness of Elsinore, and the Pride Lands. Hamlet is set in Elsinore, in Denmark. The Lion King is set in the vaguely placed Pride Lands of East Africa. Both of these are home for their characters, of course, but probably quite foreign to their intended audiences. Rather than writing a revenge tragedy about English royalty, and risking the wrath of the actual English royalty of the time, Shakespeare sets his story in a place that most of early modern London's theatregoers could only imagine, continental Europe. He does this in a lot of plays. The setting is foreign, exciting, and, from a production perspective, safe. East Africa may not be much like Denmark, and Disney didn't really have to fear censorship or punishment from an offended king, but the logic of The Lion King is similar. Number 8. Delaying action. Hamlet and Simba both spend a good chunk of their respective stories doing very little. Their fathers have been killed, and in some sense they're motivated to act, but they delay. In Hamlet, this involves a lot of talking to actors and pretending to read. In The Lion King, it's mostly musical montages and bug eating. Number 9. Skulls and graves and stuff. One of the most famous scenes in Hamlet is set in a graveyard. In it, Hamlet meets and talks with clown-like grave diggers, holds a skull, says "alas, poor Yorick," and generally becomes more aware of life and death. The Lion King's elephant graveyard scene has its clown-like hyenas, and its looming skull that makes Simba aware of mortality and the passage of time. It's a stretch, admittedly, but the parallel is there. Number 10. An alternate Lion King ending even included an iconic Hamlet quote. Minkoff wasn't kidding when he said they wound up trying to include more aspects of Hamlet in the film. In an earlier alternate ending that absolutely no one would have enjoyed, Scar winds up killing Simba and wins. Well, kind of. Scar winds up dying in a fire. In the original storyboard rendering below, Scar even says a line from Shakespeare's play, which Hamlet's friend Horatio utters as Hamlet is dying in his arms, "Good night, sweet prince." Thankfully, this potentially childhood-ruining plot twist never made it to the final version. Number 11. Simba and Hamlet's uncles convince them to exile themselves. Scar makes Simba believe it's his fault that his father fell, and he runs away into exile until he reaches adulthood. Hamlet's uncle Claudius sends him from Denmark to England, with the intent to see Hamlet put to death there. Ultimately, both Simba and Hamlet return home to claim their right to the throne. Number 12. The Lion King also draws from the biblical stories of Moses and Joseph. What, you thought the Chronicles of Narnia's Aslan was the only Bible-inspired fictional lion? Original Lion King producer Don Hahn told Blu-ray that Moses and Joseph were two biblical figures with journeys that are echoed in Simba's, where a character is born into royalty, is then exiled, and has to return to claim their kingdom. Those are ancient stories. Stories of underdogs that we as an audience love to see when we go to the theater, Hahn said. There is an underlying theme to The Lion King about that day when you are no longer a child. It's actually an age-old story, not unlike so many Disney films that are all about growing up. Number 13. Internal struggle. In The Lion King, Simba has to learn to step up and take his place as king instead of running from his past. Hamlet has overcome his indecision. He ultimately chooses to kill his uncle, a struggle that takes place in his famous "to be or not to be" soliloquy. Number 14. The Queen. The queens are completely different characters in these movies. In Hamlet, she is a woman who loves her son, marries a murderer willingly, and falls victim to the king's evil ploys against Hamlet. In Lion King, the queen is not really seen, but from what we do see, she is forced into marriage, doesn't put up with the king's rule, but still loves her son. Thanks for watching. Feel free to check all of the other videos I have made about The Lion King. If you like the video, please subscribe to my channel, hit the like button below, and please don't forget to share this video with your friends.